The story is long and emotionally intense. Structuring it into clearly marked sections or chapters can enhance readability and provide breathers for the reader. The discovery, the drive, the silence, the setup, the execution, too. Tighten pacing in. Some areas. The emotional momentum is strong, but a few spots could benefit from trimmed repetition or slightly tighter transitions. For example, I drove home around noon slow and steady like I had nowhere to be nothing weighing down my chest. You might simplify that a bit. I drove home around noon slow and steady like nothing was weighing me down. 3. Minor line edits for impact. Small edits can amplify key lines. For example, she broke me, but I wasn't staying broken. Could become, she broke me, but I refused to stay broken. For added punch. 4. Clarify timeline slightly. The narrative loops through past and present in emotionally effective ways, but occasionally the time jumps, the morning after. Might benefit from cleaner indicators to keep the reader grounded. 5. Consider a title. Something evocative like, The Night the Laugh Changed, Receipts, Smoke, and Silence. The entire piece is one long, unbroken block of text. Breaking it into paragraphs would enhance readability and emphasize emotional beats. For example, introduce scene changes with paragraph breaks. Use white space to separate key realizations or shifts in tone. 2. Tone and style. The narrator's voice is potent, detached, bitter, but focused. You could soften it slightly for nuance, or sharpen the coldness further for dramatic intensity, depending on your goals. 3. Characterization. Bianca is painted largely through the narrator's lens. If you want her to feel more dimensional, even tragically flawed, consider a moment where her humanity breaks through, genuine confusion, a flash of remorse, a hint of why she cheated, not for sympathy, but for complexity. 4. Ending options. The final paragraph hits hard. You might choose to end on an action, e.g., signing the last paper, walking out the door, end on a thought, a final line that lands like a closing argument. Leave it ambiguous. Was it justice or obsession? But then I saw you and realized maybe silence was worse than whatever might come out of my mouth. Royce looked at her. Not the way a man looks at a lost love, but the way you glance at a storm that already passed. Calm, wary, unshaken. Bianca cleared her throat. I didn't come to fight or beg. He raised an eyebrow slightly, skeptical, but quiet. She started, then trailed off. Her fingers traced the lid of the paint can. I needed to say I get it now. All of it. The silence. The way you ended it. I hated you for it at first. But now... She exhaled sharply. Now I just hate that it took all that for me to see who I'd become. Royce leaned back slightly, letting her words settle. He didn't interrupt. Didn't save her from the truth unraveling in her own voice. I lied to you. I betrayed you. And I convinced myself that you'd never leave, that your silence meant weakness. But it wasn't. It was strength. Real strength. He looked at her finally, and his voice was calm, measured. That silence was survival. Bianca nodded slowly. Yeah, I see that now. They sat there for a beat, surrounded by paint, samples and dusty sunlight through the window. Shoppers passed, oblivious. The world hadn't paused for them. Only they had. I'm not here to ask for another chance, she said. I don't deserve that. I wanted you to know I'm trying to be better now, for real. Not for Instagram, not for optics. Royce considered her. That's good, he said finally. But that's your journey, not mine. She looked down at her lap, nodded again. I figured you'd say that. He stood, paint, cans in hand. "Take care of yourself, Bianca." She looked up. "You too, Royce." And with that, he walked away. Not with bitterness, not with pride, just a quiet dignity that came from surviving the fire and refusing to walk back into the smoke. Behind him, Bianca stayed on the bench a little longer, not crying, not falling apart, just still. For once, still. And Royce? He bought his paint, drove home, and opened the windows. The air was light, sharp with possibility. There was nothing left to say, only walls to paint, and a life, finally his, to rebuild. I didn't. Walk away. I stayed quiet. Let her sit in the discomfort. Let her earn the air she was borrowing. "I moved to Austin," she said a few weeks ago. "Got a job at a small marketing agency. Nothing fancy. I just needed out of the city. Too many memories, too many stares." I nodded slowly. "Makes sense." She glanced sideways at me. "You look good. Healthier. Lighter." "I sleep now," I said. She looked down at the paint can in her lap. "Muted ash," she read aloud. "Fitting." I didn't respond. "I've replayed our last conversation 100 times," she continued. "The hardest part was realizing you didn't yell, you didn't fight. You just let it fall. And that scared me more than any rage ever could." She was right. Silence is terrifying when you expect thunder. I kept expecting you to hate me, she admitted. But the truth is, you didn't. You just stopped needing me. I finally looked at her. Really looked. She wasn't the woman I used to know. Or maybe she was, just stripped of the lashes, the filters, the influencer life. This was the person beneath all that. The one I never met when the lights were always on and the phones were always out. "Why Camden?" I asked, not out of pain, but curiosity. Of all people. Why him? She flinched. I wish I had a neat answer. But it wasn't about him, not really. It was about being seen, about control, about wanting to feel like I still had choices when everything in our life felt mapped out. "So, betrayal was your detour?" She swallowed. "I never thought you'd leave. I thought you'd always be there no matter what. And I hate that part of me, the one that assumed your loyalty was permission." I leaned back, let it soak in. "I know it doesn't matter anymore, Royce. I know you've moved on, and that's okay. You should. But I need to say this, not for closure, not for sympathy, just because it's true." She inhaled. "I'm sorry. I underestimated you. I'm sorry I used your kindness as a shield for my cowardice. I'm sorry I laughed that night like it meant nothing. It did. It meant everything. And I'll regret it for the rest of my life." I nodded once. Not to forgive. Not to open any doors. Just to acknowledge the moment. We sat in silence for a few seconds longer, the hardware store humming around us, carts rolling, keys being cut, someone asking about grout, life, still moving. She stood, smoothed her shirt, lifted the paint can like it might anchor her to something real. "I won't reach out again," she said. "I just wanted to say what I didn't get the chance to before. Thank you for everything, even the silence." She turned, then paused. "Royce," she said, "you were never dumb. I was just too selfish to see how smart you were." And with that, she walked out. I watched her go, not with bitterness, not with longing, just observation, like watching the last leaf fall from a tree you've already decided to cut down. A few minutes later, I paid for the paint, walked to my car, sat in the quiet. Then I laughed, low and brief, not because it was funny, but because I realized how light I felt. No tension, no anger, just clarity. Some endings don't come with fireworks or courtrooms. Some come with paint cans and apologies. And honestly, that was enough. There's a quiet that follows a storm, not silence, because silence still carries tension, but real quiet. The kind that settles into your bones and whispers, "It's over." That's what I felt, waking up in my new apartment on a Saturday morning, the sun slipping between linen curtains, the smell of coffee drifting in from the kitchen. No alarms, no arguments, no second-guessing who was texting whom. Just breath. I painted the place myself. Muted ash in the bedroom, urban moss in the office. Clean, grounded colors. Starting over doesn't mean erasing everything, it means choosing differently the second time around. I still had the flash drive, tucked in the back of a drawer I didn't open much, not because I needed it, but because I earned the right to hold proof that I wasn't crazy, just too trusting. Life was simpler now. I worked from home most mornings, brewed my own coffee, learned to cook real meals, not just thawed leftovers. Saturdays, I joined a running group by the river trail. It wasn't about fitness. It was about rhythm, breathing, moving forward. Her name was Cleo. We met at the group. She wasn't flashy. No curated profile, no interest in going viral. She worked as a speech therapist for kids and laughed with her whole face. The first time we got coffee, she told me about a 4-year-old who insisted he was Batman and refused to say any word that didn't start with B. I laughed harder than I had in years. She didn't know everything about me. Not at first. I didn't lead with it. When she asked why I moved, I said, needed a reset. That was enough. She didn't dig. I didn't offer. But she saw the shape of the man I was becoming, the version who no longer begged for love or shrank to keep peace. With her, I didn't feel on trial. I felt like I was choosing again, slowly, gently. Bianca? I hadn't seen her since that day in the store. Word was she was still in Austin, still working that marketing job. Sometimes someone would send a screenshot, filtered coffee cups, notebooks with healing quotes scribbled in the margins. I didn't block her, didn't follow her either. I just let her float away. One night, Cleo and I were on the balcony, sipping tea. "What's the worst kind of pain?" she asked. I didn't answer right away. I looked out at the city lights, thought about betrayal, humiliation, the nights I lay beside a stranger in my own home. Then I said, "The kind that makes you doubt your own worth." She nodded. "And the best kind of peace?" I smiled. "The kind where you don't need anyone to hand it to you." She leaned her head on my shoulder, and for the first time in years, I felt exactly where I was. Meant to be. The apartment wasn't perfect. The faucet dripped. The AC rattled, but it was mine. And when I walked in each evening, I didn't brace myself, didn't listen for tension, didn't prepare a lie to cover a truth. I just lived. Sometimes Jordan came by with takeout. We'd watch the game, laugh. "You remember that night?" he said once, pointing at the couch. "You sat right there and said, 'I don't know who I am anymore.' Look at you now." I glanced around. "I think I figured it out." "And who's that?" I shrugged. "Someone who doesn't need to be anyone's fool to feel loved." He smiled. "Took you long enough." We clinked bottles. I never filed a restraining order, never burned her stuff, never posted receipts or tried to ruin Bianca's life. That wasn't the point. She ruined herself. I just got out of the way. The rebuild wasn't revenge, it was reclamation. Every time I ran 5 miles, cooked a new dish, turned off my phone for a day, I laid another brick, not for a house, not for a brand, but for a life. The memories still came. Songs, scents, stray inflections. And sometimes a friend would say, "Man, you were too nice to her." That made me smile. Too nice? No. I was smart enough to let her believe I was dumb, just long enough to build the life she never saw coming. And this time, no one else gets to tear it down.